Welcome everybody for joining us this evening. My name is Christina Coons. I am the president of the End of Life Choices New York board. I'm excited for our presentation this evening. I have a very brief intro here. I'm very proud of our team here at End of Life Choices New York. I'm going to introduce Ayanna Woods momentarily, but I want to give mention also to our other staff members, David Levin, Judy Schwartz, Lillian Mayran, and our entire board here at End of Life Choices New York. This has been, the word is quite known across the land, an unprecedented time for all organizations, in particular nonprofits. So I am thrilled that we are here today via a virtual platform and giving you such amazing information and contacts from the bottom of my heart. I am so excited for this and thankful. I want to just make a quick mention of some of the progress that we have made with medical aid in dying in New York. We currently have 60 sponsors across the New York State legislature. As you may guess, Albany has gotten a little quiet on anything other than COVID. So we are forming internal committees, and we look to bring you current updates. So please stay tuned. If you do not currently receive our newsletter, you can go online to endoflifechoicesnewyork.org and subscribe to the newsletter. Or you can email us and ask us for assistance in registering you. So I will now turn it over to our Executive Director, Ayanna Woods. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. Welcome again, everyone. Thank you for virtually joining us tonight. We really appreciate your attendance. We really appreciate the time you've given us. As Christina mentioned, my name is Ayanna Woods. I'm the Executive Director for End of Life Choices New York. And tonight marks our 5th Barbara Schwartz lecture, and I wanted to take a little time to tell you about the amazing women who inspired this annual event. Barbara Schwartz was a board member of Compassionate Choices New York, now called End of Life Choices New York, for 20 years. Barbara was gentle, but at the same time a fierce fighter for herself and others. She fought for justice for prisoners and patients. She was formerly the director of the NYU Law School's clinic at Bedford Hills Prison, and she later became a distinguished professor of law at Touro College Law Center, where she also created the school's human rights program in Berlin. A longtime human rights advocate, she served as a consultant to the World Health Organization and other international groups. Her passion later in life was mediation, helping people amicably resolve both domestic and workplace disputes. And for several years, she served as a commentary on Court TV. Barbara was diagnosed with kidney disease at age 28 and spent 12 years on hemodialysis before receiving a kidney transplant, which sustained her life. And she demonstrated an indomitable will to live a full life and to act on her commitment to human rights in spite of limitations imposed by her illnesses, inspiring many by example. And while Barbara lived a meaningful life, an incredibly productive life, she was also determined to and did die on her own terms. At a point when she knew for herself that the quality of her life in the future would not be acceptable, when she knew that there was likely to be too much suffering to endure, Barbara decided to stop life-sustaining treatments. This was her choice, and it was the right choice for her. She passed away in 2014, and the End of Life Choices New York board has established this annual event in her honor, which has featured key leaders in the end of life movement and the fight for medical aid in dying. And tonight we're so honored and pleased to have 2 amazing people engaged in a really interesting conversation around medical aid in dying. We have JoNel Aleccia. She's a senior correspondent focused on issues related to aging and the end of life. And before joining KHN in November 2016, she was a health reporter for more than a decade, covering regional and national news at outlets including NBC News, The Today Show, MSNBC.com, and the Seattle Times. Before that, she was a reporter, editor, and columnist at newspapers in the Northwest. JoNel was a member of reporting teams that won National Press Club Awards for digital journalism, focused on the Great Recession, and on amputees created during the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. JoNel holds a master's degree in journalism and communication from the University of Oregon. And our second guest is Diane Rehm. She's a native Washingtonian who began her radio career in 1973 as a volunteer for WAMU 88.5, the NPR member station in Washington, D.C. She was hired as an assistant producer and later became the host and producer of 2 health-oriented programs. In 1979, she began hosting WAMU's local morning talk show, Kaleidoscope, which was renamed the Diane Rehm Show in 1984. The Diane Rehm Show grew from a local program to one with international reach and a weekly on-air audience of more than 2.8 million. Diane now brings her unique mix of curiosity, honesty, intimacy, and nearly 40 years as host of WAMU and NPR's The Diane Rehm Show to the podcast world. Listen weekly to On My Mind for Diane's conversations with newsmakers, writers, artists, and thinkers. Many of the nation's prominent newsmakers, journalists, and authors have appeared on her program, including then Senator Barack Obama, former Presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, former Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Hillary Clinton, and author Toni Morrison. Newsweek magazine named The Diane Rehm Show one of the most interesting talk shows in the country. And in 2013, the program was identified as one of the most powerful programs in public radio. Diane has received many honors and awards in her career, and in 2010, she won a personal Peabody Award. And in 2014, President Obama presented her with the National Humanities Medal. Diane is the author of 4 best-selling autobiographical books: Finding My Voice, Toward Commitment, A Dialogue About Marriage, Life with Maxie, On My Own, which was a moving story about the death of her husband of over 54 years and her struggle to reconstruct her life without him. And her latest book is When My Time Comes, which we'll be discussing tonight, which addresses the urgent, hotly contested cause of the Right to Die movement, of which she is one of our most inspiring champions. And there will soon be a public television documentary of the same name. Thank you again to JoNel and Diane. We really look forward to your discussion tonight. I'll turn it over to JoNel.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And it's such an honor to be able to talk to Diane. Obviously, I'm a longtime listener and I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, this is what I
can hear my little dog.
I hear her.
Bella is
you want to introduce her?
Noise. What can I say?
Does she want to say hello before we start, or is she okay?
She's okay. I don't know what's going on. Come here, Bella. Come on, sweetheart. When she comes in, I'll introduce her to the audience.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Well, I've just recently finished your book, and I found it fascinating. I've talked to several of the people who are profiled in the book, and they're some of my favorite sources, and you reflected their views in such depth that it was really interesting to hear their thoughts in more detail. So I, as a reader, really appreciated it.
Thank you.
One thing I wondered, just to get our conversation started, is I know that your interest in medical aid and dying intensified after the very difficult death of your husband, John, in 2014. I wondered what your thoughts about the issues surrounding aid and dying were before that. What knowledge you had and how interested you had been in the issues before your personal experience.
JoNel, my personal experiences really go back to the age of 19 when my mother was dying. She had liver cancer, and I had been told when I was 15 that she was going to die within 18 months. Indeed, she lived for nearly 4 more years, but I saw the suffering that she endured. I heard her beg to die. I can remember being in the hospital with her. Her stomach, because of liver cancer, was so distended, and the doctors at Georgetown University Hospital kept having to drain her over and over again. And she said to me, I want to die. I want to die. She didn't want to go through those experiences anymore. And I can remember, even all these years later, hearing her voice saying those words and thinking to myself, she should be able to die. There is no hope for her they have told us, the doctors have told us, there's not much more they can do for her. Why don't they let her die? So in addition to the experience I had with my husband, which was so difficult, I really think back to the death of my mother as well. She died when I was 19. She was 49.
My.
And my father died 11 months later, literally of a broken heart. So I have lived with those feelings for most of my life.
Yeah. And you didn't become an advocate around the issue till later, though, right?
Exactly.
Obviously, you were a journalist, and
when my husband, who was suffering from Parkinson's and had agreed, after we had lived in our beautiful home where we raised our children for 40 years, after we had lived there for so long, it did have a stairway. And when he began suffering serious side effects and instability from Parkinson's disease, we knew we'd have to move, and we did. And we found a wonderful condominium here in Washington, and I can remember walking into this apartment and hearing him saying, "Diane, look at the light.
oh,
Look at the light." I can still hear those words in my ears, and I relish every single day the light in this apartment. But sadly, he was only here for a short time before the symptoms of Parkinson's became so serious that he began falling. And when he began falling here in the apartment, I knew and he knew that I couldn't take care of him, and that there was not enough room in the apartment for 24-hour care.
and that's when he moved to assisted living.
And that's when he moved to assisted living, where he ultimately died.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That sounded like such a difficult experience, and it also sounds like it really spurred you to become so dedicated to this movement.
Oh, JoNel, really. He, about 2 weeks, little less, before he died, said to me, let's have the kids. My daughter is a physician in Boston. My son is an academic, a vice president at a university in Pennsylvania. Let's have the kids on the line and the doctor here at the nursing home here with us, because I want to talk with everyone. And when we were all gathered, Jenny was on the telephone, David was in the room with us, the doctor was in the room with us, and Diane Rehm said to the doctor, "I am ready to die." He said, "I can no longer feed myself. I can no longer stand on my own. I can no longer take care of myself in any way," which included taking a shower or toileting himself. I had by that time brought in a helper for 12 hours a day, so that someone was with him in all of his waking hours. But he knew and said, I have lost my dignity. And I know if I continue to live, I will lose more of my dignity. Now, JoNel, he was a man who had been he was an attorney, and he had become the first general counsel of the special trade representative in the Kennedy and Johnson administrations. And he had such pride. He was a gloriously intelligent and academic and all kinds of interest in his life. He was my teacher.
Mm-hmm. And it sounded like he was very clear about his choice.
Oh, absolutely. And when the doctor said, I'm sorry, here in the state of Maryland, I cannot help you legally, morally, or ethically, Diane Rehm was absolutely furious, because I think he thought that the doctor would simply give him an injection and put him out of his misery. I fear that too many of us think that that's what's going to happen.
That there must be an option.
Absolutely.
You know, that came through so clearly in your book. And one of the things that I was reminded of is one of the best reasons to be a reporter is because we get to ask all of these people these fascinating questions for our stories, but also for ourselves.
Right.
And I wondered, talking to all of the people with the broad range of views about this issue in your book, I wondered what you learned that has stuck with you, what you learned that you may not have even known before, even with all of your knowledge and your personal experience.
I learned that people have reasonable reasons to doubt. I learned from an AME minister in the most prominent black church here in Washington that African Americans doubt the truthfulness of the medical profession because of the Tuskegee experiments. I mean, I had known that, but hearing it from him, I really understood it.
That it was a real mistrust in a real way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
In such a real way. And he then went on to say, if someday I can find that I believe that medical aid in dying is truly a choice for African Americans and not something that's foisted on them, then I will support it. But right now, he said, I cannot support it. And I understood that in a new way that I hadn't really understood before.
That's very, very interesting. In a similar way that communities of color are voicing that kind of mistrust as we discuss the COVID vaccines, it struck me that there were parallels there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Um, I wonder in your discussions with this range of people, I wonder what you think is still the most misunderstood part or parts about medical aid in dying. I mean, we've been talking about it in this country for more than 20 years, of course. And I wonder what people still don't get about it.
I think they don't get that it is truly a choice that is, you can back out at any moment, that it is truly a choice that is examined by two physicians, that is in some case examined by a psychotherapist, to on your own. You must be alone when that psychotherapist talks with you, to ensure that you are not being pressured by anyone outside or inside the family, that there is no underlying massive depression, that there is no underlying feeling of, well, if I hang on, all my money is going to be gone. If I hang on, my children won't get my money, or they are pressuring me. There has to be clarity. And that is what comes with these medical examinations. And JoNel, in the more than 20 years that Oregon has had the law in place, the first state to achieve that, there has not been a single case brought forward to say, I am being pressured and I do not want this for myself. Nor has there been any case brought forward by any other family members saying, my parent, my sister, my brother was being pressured. Not a single one.
That is what the data show so far. Absolutely. And since we're talking about that for more than 20 years, we know that aid in dying is allowed in more than in 10 jurisdictions and is being considered, as we heard, in New York and other places. How do you think of the pace of the progress so far?
I think it's slow and appropriately slow. I think people have to, well, let me start over again. Death has been the taboo subject in our society from the beginning. And the fact of the matter is that people really don't want to talk about death. They don't want to acknowledge even that death ever comes. I spoke at a church, a tiny, beautiful, white steepled church in New England. And I started out by saying, please raise your hand if you've decided you're not going to die. And of course, there was lots of giggling, but it was uncomfortable giggling, because the fact of the matter is that we are all going to die at some point. And the objective of both this book and the video, the documentary that will come to public television next April next year, on which this book is based, will help people to understand why it's so important to talk about death and what it is we want. Death is part of life. We are born, we live, we grow, we hope, we die. And what we as human beings would like to have at the end of that life is what this book is all about. Do we want God to be the only decider? Do we say to ourselves, I'm here until God says it's time for me to go? If that is your belief, I support you 1,000%. If you say that you want everything that medical science can provide to you, I support you 1,000%. And if I choose to end my life because the joy of living, the production of living, the participation in society has gone out of my life, and I am suffering in the last 6 months of my life, I hope you will accept my choice as well.
You know, one thing that strikes me is that in this time, as we've been dealing with this pandemic, the question of advanced care planning, of making sure your wishes are known, has been even more important. And, you know, medical aid and dying, of course, can't be used with COVID patients. They won't qualify, and it's not appropriate. But the conversations are having to occur sometimes under duress. And that was one point that seemed clear in your book. I was surprised to see that even some of the people you interviewed hadn't had those conversations with their family members. And I wonder how you think people can get over that hurdle, what it will take. I mean, there's a concerted effort. We know about things like the Conversation Project and people, as the holidays are approaching, you know, we always want to say, if you're going to be with your family, have those conversations. How can people break the ice, or how can they start having their conversations when, as you point out, they resist them so strongly?
Very, very carefully and very gently. And it's not just one conversation, it's many conversations. I think that for my own children, I'm 84 years old, so my son, my older child, is 60. My younger child, my daughter, is 57. We have talked about what I want because they have asked me what I want, and I have said what I want. I think to begin such a conversation for someone in the baby boomer generation, for example, dealing with an older parent, might begin by saying, you know, Pop, I'm getting a little older, and I've sort of been thinking about what the end of my life might be like. And I've sort of been talking with my own family about it, and I wonder what you think about what you'd like at the end of your life. You know, we're all gonna get there eventually, and there may be a rebuff, an initial, immediate rebuff, and so you got to back off and you sort of wait until the next opportunity. It's a slow process, but it does have a beginning and it does move forward. I have a 92-year-old friend who has kidney problems, who has just broken a hip, had a hip replaced, who is in a wheelchair and is now on dialysis 3 days a week.
My goodness.
And after I wrote my book, he said to me, because he is Roman Catholic, he said to me, the first chapter I went to was with the Roman Catholic priest, because I wanted to know what he said. So he opened the conversation, and I said, well, you know, I'm wondering, have you talked with your wonderful family about what you would like at the end of your life? And there was a long pause, and he said, you know, I really haven't. And I said, well, do you intend to? And he said, well, maybe I should. That was an opening.
That's an opening. My
It's an
goodness.
opening.
And I saw in your book, you have made your wishes extremely clear.
Yeah.
You had your grandson, when he was 18, record your wishes. And your wishes, as I read them, touch on some very thorny issues. The issue of people who develop dementia and still want to have control over their end of life, the end of their life. And, you know, for many, that is a bridge too far to even discuss. And so I guess I was wondering, you asked your grandson and your family to carry out your wishes if you should develop dementia or Alzheimer's and help you end your life. I wondered if you are confident. Well, I wonder what you think they're actually going to be able to do in that, if that situation arises.
You said at the start of our discussion that medical aid in dying is legal in 10 jurisdictions, and the 10th is the District of Columbia, where I live. Now, what is the requirement is that I be within 6 months of death by some disease, some disorder within me. I believe that ultimately a pre-signed document saying I do not wish to live on with dementia after a certain point, which I asked my grandson and my children to inform me of, that I will end my life before that dementia carries me to a point where I can no longer recognize that I want to end my life. So I have said to them, it's going to be up to you to inform me when you see what's happening to me, because I don't want to live beyond a point where I am no longer useful to society. I can no longer take care of myself. I can no longer be the person I have been all my life. And when that time comes, I am ready to go. In fact, when the COVID virus hit, I called my own physician and I said, I want you to know that should I get the coronavirus, number one, I do not wish to be taken to a hospital, and I do not want to be put on a ventilator. I wish to stay in my own home. And she said to me, the thing you need to know is that in your home, we can give you 40% oxygen. In a hospital, we can raise that to 60%. And I said, 40%'s fine with me, and that's it. I know there are after effects to being put on a ventilator. As I said, I'm 84 years old. I've had a wonderful life.
And you'd like to remain it. If you developed COVID, you would like, and were seriously ill, you have asked to remain at home.
Absolutely.
I think we're seeing a lot more of that than has been documented, actually.
I think so too. I think
That's
so.
very interesting. The question about, I have to say, I don't know that you will be, are you saying that you would try and use DC's medical aid in dying law if you had dementia?
I think the movement is moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Because so many people are asking about that.
They are asking.
Feel as though they've been left out, that only physical illness applies and mental acuity or loss thereof does not apply. And that's too bad.
Have you asked your doctor specifically if he or she would help in that situation?
I have not made that request, but I probably will soon.
That's very, very interesting. It's all of these issues, you know, I've reported about patients who have been diagnosed with dementia and sought to, you know, simply not be spoon-fed at the end of life.
Right.
And their wishes have been denied. And it has seemed like the law has been stuck at that point.
That's right.
I wonder how you see it progressing.
I do see it progressing, but there are going to have to be a lot more states signing on. And New York is on the edge. Massachusetts is on the edge. I think when you get important states like that moving forward, you are going to see more opening up to that. By the way, there is a new movie with Susan Sarandon. It's gotten terrible reviews, called Blackbird. I did watch it yesterday in anticipation of this conversation, and it has its faults, but she has ALS in the movie, and it's both a trite and a lovely portrayal of someone deciding, I'm ready to go.
Interesting. I'll have to watch that.
Be careful, because there are two Blackbird movies on television, on Netflix. One about a young man stockpiling guns.
Oh.
And the other with Susan Sarandon.
Oh, I'll look for the
So
Susan
be
Sarandon.
careful. Yeah.
You know, one question I have as we're talking about progress, I reported last year about a situation in Colorado where, as you know, aid in dying is legal. And a hospital there fired the doctor who tried to help a patient. And that case is still in litigation. And why it's still being defended is because the Catholic-owned run hospital is expecting to take this case to the Supreme Court and defend it on a First Amendment basis. Given the status we're in about a possibly very conservative Supreme Court, what do you make of that in terms of the future of medical aid in dying?
I can only tell you that 70% of the residents of the state of Massachusetts voted to move forward with medical aid in dying. And then the Roman Catholic Church stepped in with $5 million and defeated it. The Roman Catholic Church has been the strongest negative voice against medical aid in dying, even though so many members of the church itself feel very positively about medical aid in dying. It comes from the Vatican. It comes from the idea that God should be the only decider. And for those who believe that, I understand. But don't put your views, don't put your decisions onto me. I am a human being with my own thoughts and my own ways of deciding.
Yeah. You know, I realize that our time has just sped by, and so I want to leave some time for the questions from the audience. I have many more, but I'm only leaving 12 minutes. So if you have questions, it's just been delightful talking with you, Diane.
Well,
Thank you.
I've loved talking with you, JoNel. Thank you.
Great, sure. And here's some. Okay, I'm going to do the chat. So let me look. Let's see. Oh, why? So, a person asks, why is COVID excluded as a reason for using medical aid in dying? I mean, the short answer is that the waiting period requirements. In a typical COVID escalation, there wouldn't be enough time for a patient to get the first physician, the second physician, and any waiting period.
And that points to the whole notion of having these discussions with your family beforehand, saying, I don't want to be on a ventilator. I don't want external mechanisms applied to keep me alive, which is what COVID does, which COVID demands. So it underscores the reason to have these discussions with your family. COVID is too much right there, in your face, right now, and it's too late.
Mm-hmm. And with all of the infection risks, the Death with Dignity folks said that often, people will die before they can avail themselves, essentially.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Let's see, another question. Could you say more about your instructions regarding when dementia has progressed sufficiently that you would no longer want to continue to live?
Well, I think that I am relying on my own sense of myself, the reactions of my family, my daughter and son-in-law, both doctors, my son, my husband, my grandchildren, who know me as I am, and who will honestly tell me, and that's why I did that video with my grandson, I said, I want you to be honest with me and to say to me, Mom, you're losing it. Mom.
I wonder if you'll believe them when they say it.
Well, but that's why I wanted to be early in the process, not later on. It's got to be early in the process. And then my husband and I would follow it. Surely you and everyone on this call has read the piece in the New York Times Magazine about the husband and wife, the wife who was experiencing dementia, and the two of them decided when the time had come and when it was getting so close to being too late for her to take her own life, which she did in a state that had not allowed medical aid and dying.
You worry that that's too much responsibility for your family?
Nope. I think they're strong. I think they're strong, and I am strong, and I think we all know the realities of life and death, and they know I love them, and I know they love me, and I just feel very confident about that. I also have to tell you that I come from an Arab background. My mother and father both born in Turkey. My mother went to Alexandria, Egypt, my father to Beirut, Lebanon. So I am first generation Arab American here in this country, and I think I'm stubborn. I think I know what I want, and I think I'll stick with it.
Let me see. Let me get to other people's questions. 1 second.
Okay. I love these questions.
There's two good questions. One is, can you speak about the fact that having those difficult conversations is not only good for oneself, but also a gift to one's family?
What a wonderful statement. What a wonderful statement. It is a fresh reminder that we're all in this together. And I will help you do whatever you want done. And I will support you, and I will be with you. And if you will allow me to know what it is you want, I will make sure to be there. It's a lovely, lovely question.
That is lovely. Let's see. I wonder what Diane will do if society does not move to trust others to decide to expand MAID so that a surrogate can hasten cause death for a decisionally compromised person, if I understand her position.
I think eventually, and it may be long after I'm gone, I think eventually it will, because the explosion of dementia and Alzheimer's disease in this country, with the expanded aging of our population, clearly is going to bring this into play. And, you know, it's so interesting that the people who, the disabled community, have a divided feeling about this whole medical aid in dying question. There are some who say, well, you may be targeting me. And there are others who saying, why are you leaving me out? You know, if I want to go, I should be allowed to go. So where this is going to go, I think New York and Massachusetts are going to be the next states who are going to allow this. People thought it was just going to be on the West Coast. It's not. It's going to go forward.
And let's see. Read the dementia. How would medical aid in dying work, given that you will need a medical diagnosis to protect any physician who would, yeah, that's right, give you the necessary medications? That's another tricky thing.
It's a tricky thing, and it's going to come. I believe it's going to come because we in the medical aid in dying community are going to continue to push for it, because people who are beginning to suffer from dementia and who know they are susceptible to Alzheimer's want it. And it is they who will push this forward.
I really look forward to those conversations in the future.
I do too.
Let me see if I've missed anyone. The discussion about the 6-month limitation for terminal illness has been you know, I mean, it's kind of arbitrary and
yeah, absolutely arbitrary. And who can know? What doctor can predict? And I absolutely understand that. But we have relied on physicians for so long. The fact of the matter is that we as patients are taking more of our own health care into our own hands. And doctors are beginning to cooperate with that more and more. So the prognosis of 6 months, those who are against medical aid in dying say, how can any doctor predict? And those who are for say, well, we have a fairly good idea. So it comes down to who you trust. And you have to trust in your own medical doctor. I changed doctors because my prior doctor did not believe in medical aid in dying and was not willing to say to me, I will support you. I loved her, but I left her and went to another doctor who said, I will support you.
Great. As you say in radio, I think we'll just leave it there.
It's been a wonderful conversation with you.
For me too. Such a pleasure. Thank you
so much.
I want to thank both of you so much for giving us your time for this wonderful conversation. And I want to thank our audience as well for joining us this evening. Stay tuned for upcoming events. You can follow us on social media, go to our website, read our newsletter, and we'll let you know what else is in store. But thank you again. Give a little applause to both of you tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good
Good night,
Bye-bye.
night.